All right, so domain and range we have briefly talked about at the beginning of the year. But there are two different types of notations. There's inequality notation, and then there's interval notation. So on a number line, it's pretty easy to do both of those, but once it gets to a piecewise function, which we'll see here in a minute, it gets a little bit more difficult. So for inequality, I'm just going to, I usually take a highlighter, which you might want to see if there's any in the little cubbies or things, or if you have two different colors, that usually helps me for domain and range. For inequality, this is on the x-axis, so we're going to say that x is our variable. And it's between two numbers, -3 and 2. So I would write -3 first is less than or equal to, because it has a closed circle. So remember, closed is less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. And then open is just less than or greater than. So if you want to make yourself a note of that, maybe up at the top so you don't forget. Is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 2. Then if I were to write this in interval notation, remember that if you have a closed circle, then you use a bracket. So it would be bracket -3 to 2 bracket. So if you have an open circle, it's less than, greater than, parentheses. And if you have a closed circle, it's less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and then brackets. Then if you have a space between them, then I would say that x is from -4 is less than or equal to x is less than 1. Or, then how would I write the next one? If it's going from 2 to infinity, I would say what?
Is less than or equal to.
X is less than or equal to 2. I mean, greater than or equal to 2. Then when you have interval notation, that's when you're going to use that U. We call that a union. So it would be bracket -4, comma, 1. Then what would I put? Parenthesis, U, bracket, 2 to infinity, positive infinity. And then everything that's connected with an infinity is a parenthesis. You never put bracket with an infinity, because infinity goes on forever and never touches infinity. So let's look at a graph now. And whenever I have a graph, what I usually like to do, my domain is with my x's. So I like to take a highlighter and I like to highlight the bounds of my x values. So I'm going to take one color, you could use yellow or something, and I'm going to highlight the left bound. So my vertical line, my left bound. And then my right bound goes on forever. So I'm just going to make a little arrow. So if I'm just looking at my x values on the left, I'm reading it from left to right. So what x value does the graph start at? -5. And what does it go to? To positive infinity. So then I would say for inequality notation that x is what? Yeah, -5 is less than or equal to x, or x is greater than or equal to -5. If you wanted to write negative first, or -5 first, then you could put a less than or equal to x. It doesn't matter which way you write it. So if you wanted to write it like this, I usually just like putting my variable first. But either one will work.
So do we just like ignore the dot at 2?
You ignore the dot at 2 because it is still continuing to be defined. Like, it doesn't take a break anywhere. So we'll see where it takes a break here in a minute. But yeah, so if you can imagine taking your pencil and drawing a line from start to finish, it only stops at a closed circle, at an open circle or a space. There are no open circles or spaces. So I can easily take my pen and just draw forever. Then for interval notation, I would go from -5, there would be a bracket, to positive infinity parenthesis. So then for range, I do the same thing. I'm going to use a different color highlighter. And I'm going to draw from bottom to top. So I highlight the bottom, and then I highlight the top. So my y is defined from bottom to top. And what y value does my graph start at? It starts at -1. So -1 is less than or equal to y. And then where does it stop? At 5. And it doesn't go anywhere higher than 5. So I stop at 5 because it's a horizontal line there. And does it have a closed circle at 5? Yes, so I would say less than or equal to +5. And then for interval notation, I would have bracket, -1, comma, 5, bracket. Okay, so if we're going to look at the domains, which is our x's, and we go from left to right, I'm going to take my highlighter, and it goes on forever to the left. That's what that arrow means. So it goes on forever. Then it takes a break here. So I'm going to put a line there. Then it starts up again.
Oh, wow.
And then it goes on forever. So if I were thinking about inequality, it's going all the way to the left. So I would say x is less than or equal to what? -2. Or x is greater than, or would it be greater than or equal to? Greater than what? 2. And in my opinion, interval notation is sometimes easier, so you might want to do interval first and then try to go back, do inequality. And once you get to pre-cal and calculus, it'll almost all be interval notation. You kind of do away with inequality as the years go on. So if I were doing interval, it goes all the way to the left, so I would start at what? So parenthesis, negative infinity. It stops at -2 in bracket. Union. Starts back up again at 2. Would that have a parenthesis or a bracket? Parenthesis. And then it goes on forever until positive infinity.
I like interval. Can we just do interval?
No, we have to do both. So then I'm going to look at my range. Going to draw from bottom to top. So it goes on forever. Then if you look at +3, so you see that open circle right there. So then I think, well, maybe it takes a break, but whenever it stops on that horizontal line, if it is defined anywhere on that horizontal line, then it trumps your open circle. Like it takes precedent over that. So like right here, that was a good one. I didn't even mean to. Right here we have 2 closed circles and we have an open one. So if you have at least one closed circle there, then you're good to go. You don't have to take a break. You don't have to stop. So I'm going to erase my highlight there. And I'm going to keep going because that open circle is not going to stop me because I have 2 closed circles there. And I'm going to go forever. The open circle is there, but I have a closed circle there too. So technically it's defined there.
So if you have both,
If you have both, then you don't stop. If you only have an open circle, then you stop.
and has at least one infinity.
No, just at least one. So stop only at open. Stop only at open circles. But if you have a closed one there, then you don't stop. Which I do. I have 2 closed ones. You don't need 2. You just need 1, but I have 2. So then my y is defined everywhere. It never stops. So it goes from negative infinity to positive infinity. And then my inequality, if it's defined everywhere, then you would just say all real numbers. My little fancy R.
Don't say R, A, R.
That R is easy. Okay, I want you to try number 5. Okay, so let's look at this. For domain, I start here. Then at 0, do I stop? No, because I only stop at open circles. I only stop at open circles, so I do not stop at 0, and then I keep going forever. So if I were to, we can start with interval, since we prefer that. So I start at -4, and would that be a parenthesis or a bracket? A parenthesis, and then I go to where? Positive infinity. If I were to convert this to inequality, an easy way, if you start with interval and you want to go back to inequality, an easy way to do that is I put my -4 here, and I put my infinity here, and then I'm going to put my x in the middle. Then you just put your less than or less than or equal to
No,
signs.
it's greater than, it's, the second one is equal to.
Oh, I meant to put greater than. Wait, hold on.
I mean, the second one.
It wouldn't be less than or equal to, you can never equal infinity.
Oh, you can't.
No. But you don't really need the infinity, so I'm going to erase that because you don't need infinity in inequality notation. And then if you wanted to put your x first, you just kind of flip it like you're flipping a pancake, so it would look like x is greater than -4. But I'm not going to be picky about that. If you want to put the number first, that's fine. Then we look at range. So I start at the bottom, then I take a break, there's a gap, then I start up again, and I go on forever.
Yeah, something's burning.
I don't smell anything.
Step like right here,
Something's definitely burning.
or right over there.
I smell fire.
Okay, so the range, I'm going from bottom to top, so if I wanted to do interval first, then I would start where? -8. And would that be parenthesis or bracket? Parenthesis, and then it stops where? -4, bracket, union, starts up again at 0. Yeah, brackets are when your circle is closed, and then parenthesis is when your circle is open. And then positive infinity. So then for inequality, I'm going to say -8 is less than, y is less than or equal to -4. Or, then it's going from 0 to infinity. So 0 is less than y, or you could say y is greater than 0. No, 0. It's at 0. This is 0, 0 right here in the middle.
I don't like when it goes by threes on one end.
Okay, so let's look at number 6. Yeah, you always go bottom to top and then left to right. So domain is always left to right, and then range is always bottom to top. So left to right, -5, stops at -1, starts up again at 2, goes to 4. Then from bottom to top, it starts at -8, it stops at -4. And then you have a horizontal line at 4, but it's not going up or going down. It's a horizontal line. So in inequality notation, we would just say y equals 4. In interval notation, then you would just say 4 in brackets, because you would have, it would be defined on at y equals 4 at least at one point. If it were just an open circle there with no line at all, then you would put parentheses 4. But it would be brackets because it is defined at y equals 4, at least at one point. Okay, we look at number 7. So something easy about this one is that if I were to highlight left to right, bottom to top, it goes out forever, forever, and then for range, it also goes out forever, forever. So for inequality, what would I write for both domain and range? All real numbers, no asymptote. Because it's going like down and to the left and it's going up and to the right. So we assume that it goes on forever. And then my interval for both of those would be what? Negative infinity to positive infinity.
I'm talking about like if we're ever like an actual cubic function, is there asymptote?
No. Yeah, you just keep going. So for domain, goes on forever, and then at -1, it is defined there. There's no open circle, so you keep going until 4, then you take a, and then you start up again, and then you go on forever. So for my domain, I'm gonna have 2 separate intervals. It's gonna be from negative infinity, and then I stop at 4. And would 4 have a parenthesis or a bracket? Parenthesis, union. I start back up at 6, parenthesis, positive infinity.
So it doesn't matter that they overlap?
No, the overlap doesn't matter because I am defined here and here. If there were, the only time that you stop is if you have an open circle or a space. So only stop at open circle or a space. But no. But since you have closed circles right here, you don't stop. Even though there's like a gap, it's still defined at that x value. So then inequality, it would be x is, let's see, less than or just less than 4, or x is greater than 6. And then for my range, I start down here.
Oh, you didn't.
Do what? X is less than 4.
Would you take
And then x is also greater than 6.
Would you take it if I put negative infinity is less than x is less than 4?
Yeah, I would take that as well. So you can. You're not really supposed to, but I'm not going to count it wrong. It's not technically wrong. So then do I stop at 0? Do I keep going?
Keep going.
I keep going, and then do I stop at 3? So I have an open circle here, but do I have a closed circle on the same horizontal line? Yes, right here. This is technically, it's a line, so it's still a closed circle. It's defined there. So I have an open circle here at 3, but it's defined right here. So I keep going.
Oh, I didn't. Can we, like, on the test, will there be a closed circle there, or will I have to, like...
No, it'll just be a line. So it is defined. It is defined on that function or that line. So even though I have one open circle on that same horizontal line, it's defined there. So I keep going because it is defined, so I don't stop, because it's not that I only have an open circle there. And I keep going, and I keep going, and it goes on forever, both ways. So my range, then, it would start at -8, bracket, and then it would keep going forever, so to positive infinity. And for inequality, it would be y is greater than or equal to -8.